Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Ann Conti. I am with IU5, Northwest Tri-County Intermediate Unit, and we are happy to have you here for this session of our Student in the Workplace Virtual Connections, which we are doing in partnership with Northwest PA Job Connect. This afternoon, we have Alan Norton. He's the Workforce Development Executive for the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry. So he's going to take the next half hour to chat with us about his job and answer any questions. So we are happy to have him here with us. Without further ado, Alan, I'm going to send you live. There you are. If you could start, introduce yourself, who you are and what you do and what the organization is that you work for.
Sure. Thank you, Ann, and thank you for having me, and thank you guys for joining us today. So yeah, like Ann said, my name is Alan Norton. I'm the Workforce Development Executive for the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry. I've been in this role about a year and a half now, almost 2 years actually. And before I joined the chamber almost 2 years ago, I didn't really know what a chamber was. There's local chambers, there's state chambers, and then of course there's the U.S. Chamber. What our goal is as a state chamber is to attract businesses to PA and keep the businesses here that are here. We do that by educating them on how legislation affects them, by providing education and resources to help them be successful here in the state, and then also advocating on their behalf at the state capitol. So working with the legislature and the governor to make sure they understand how policy will affect and impact businesses in PA. Basically, our end goal is to make sure that there's good jobs here for the folks in PA. Yeah,
and I think kind of a vital entity for our communities. And I appreciate that you said you weren't even sure what the chambers did, because I imagine we've got students out there who don't, and I know when I was their age, I didn't. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us on a day-to-day basis, what are some of your major responsibilities and what fills the majority of your time?
Okay, good question. There's a few different pillars with my role. One is creating awareness around the career opportunities that exist in PA for our state's youth. PA has a very diverse economy, one of the most diverse in the whole nation. We have a lot to be proud of. Pittsburgh, in the western part of the state, is quickly becoming the tech center of the country. It's definitely the tech and biotech center of Pennsylvania. Philadelphia is the home to a lot of medical research and healthcare companies, and of course a big education sector. And then all across PA, we rank 8th in manufacturing. We're the #2 natural gas producer. And then of course the Southeast is the 6th largest media market in the country. And I was that kid once. I grew up near Hershey, and I grew up truly believing that if I stayed in Hershey, all of my jobs would be limited to hospitality and tourism. I really was not made aware of the opportunities that exist. And actually, I'm finding that still happens. Just last week, I presented for a group of students in Pittsburgh, and not one of them knew about the tech boom that was happening in their own city right now. So bringing that awareness to you guys. We also have a website we maintain to provide resources and tools for you guys to use, starttheconversationhere.com. There's a career calculator on there we developed last year to help you see how your choice of college and career will impact your financial future. We also work with businesses to help them make connections with talent pipeline providers. Our workforce, we entered the workforce world about 4 years ago here at the Chamber, because at that time, only about 21% of businesses across the state ranked the readiness of the workforce as excellent good. And actually in 2018, for the first time ever on our yearly economic survey, workforce was the #1 issue for companies. And actually, more than anything now, when companies choose somewhere to locate, one of the first things they look for is, are there people here to fill the jobs we have? And do they have the right skills, or is there an opportunity to reskill and upskill them? So working with businesses to make those connections and diversify their talent pipelines. And then the last part is advocacy, and really educating the legislature and businesses on how certain barriers impact the workforce. For example, right now, childcare is a big issue. Even prior to COVID, childcare was a big barrier for folks to get to work. And now post-COVID, just last month, to give you an example, we had nearly a little over 1 million people leave the workforce in America simply because of a lack of childcare access. The majority of them, of course, were women. And so we're working to address that issue as well.
Yeah, and I think all points and all responsibilities that are really important for our youth to hear about and to help them get this more comprehensive look at what the jobs look like out there. And I grew up in Pittsburgh, so I appreciate you bringing that up, but just that sometimes we don't know what jobs are out there because we haven't learned about them, and sometimes it's as simple as that. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. I did want to ask, you mentioned a website and I didn't get it down fast enough, but if you repeat that, I'm happy to put it in the announcements so that our viewers can watch or head over there. So if you wouldn't mind repeating it, I'll get that out to them right now.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks, Ann. It's starttheconversationhere.com. And we have resources on there, such as the career calculator I mentioned. There's an in-demand occupations page that's Pennsylvania specific. So it actually lists currently the top 33 most in-demand occupations in PA. And students can go in there and learn about, how do I get into this occupation? What does it do? Right now, we're going through another industrial revolution. So the job market's changing. And it's changing at a faster rate than any time before. So that's also part of why there's a disconnect. When I was a kid, the question was always, where are you going to go to college? Where are you going to go to college? Well, now that's not the only path to success. As a matter of fact, there's a whole variety of pathways to success, and college is just one small part. So the question we should be asking students now is, what do you want to do for a career, and how do you get there? That's one of the reasons I'm passionate about it. Actually, prior to joining the chamber, I worked for the past 7 years, or the previous 7 years, at our local community college as an admissions counselor. And during my last 2 or 3 years, my fastest growing student population were students who just completed a bachelor's degree. And instead of entering the workforce or furthering their education, they were coming back to community college to gain skills so they could enter the workforce.
Can you touch a little bit on, what skills they were hoping to gain, and maybe like what skills you see as important for students to have?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. There's a reason we're really focused on STEM and STEAM conversations right now, and that's because a lot of the jobs that are being created today are middle skill jobs. You may hear in the news or read in the news sometimes, I get so frustrated, they make it sound like the automation and the robots are coming to take all the jobs, and that's just not true. Automation is going to eliminate, it's already started eliminating about 75 million jobs over the next 2 years, but it's creating nearly 135 million new jobs. And they're mostly middle skill jobs that require simply a credential or an associate's degree, or even just an apprenticeship where you don't have to go to school yourself, but the company will hire you on and train you. So the automation and robotic systems don't just work on their own. We need folks who can fix them when they break down, program them to do new tasks. We need engineers who can do research and development to make those better. I think about the iPhone as an example. You guys will understand when the iPhone first came out 12 years ago versus the iPhone now, it's a much different phone. It's bigger, better, faster, stronger. That's because of the engineers in research and development who figure out, how do we make this bigger, faster, better, stronger? Healthcare, huge need for healthcare. Just to give you an example, we need 19,000 new RNs in Pennsylvania in the next 8 years just to keep pace with demand. We need nearly 8,000 new truck drivers over the next 8 years. Electricians, plumbers, construction is huge, and then IT specialists. There's a huge need. We ended 2019 with 400,000 open cybersecurity jobs in America, and that's just cybersecurity, which is just one little sliver of the roles that exist in IT.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was gonna circle back and ask you, based on that list of the top 33 highest priority occupations, what were some of those? And I think you touched on that, but would there be any that you would add that you think folks should know about?
The top 6, actually the top 4 are health career jobs, nursing roles, also respiratory therapists is in there, physical therapist is in there, Right now, there's actually a gap in America. If you look at all of the open healthcare jobs, medical assistant, CNA, surgeon, doctor, and all of the kids currently in trade school or college for a health career, there's still a gap of 1.2 million. There's still 1.2 million healthcare job openings that we don't have people in the pipeline for. And one thing I want you guys to think about when you're thinking about careers, you've probably learned about supply and demand in business class and how it affects pricing. It also affects wages. So if there's a really high demand for a certain skill in the workforce, but a low supply of workers with that skill, wages just go up and up and up to try and attract more people. On the flip side, if there's a low demand for a skill, but a high supply of workers with that skill, wages are going to go down or stagnate. So those are some things you want to consider when you're thinking about a career. That was a great question.
Yeah, and those are all really, really great points. And, maybe we learn about them in business class, but don't always think about how they could apply to us, right? Or how they could apply to what we want to do. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Can you speak to, in your role, some of the skills that you need to do the work that you do? And so what are the skills that you value and that you feel like make you successful at your job?
Great question. And actually, general soft skills and employability skills. And what's nice is those skills are transferable to any job. But really for me, communication, I spend the bulk of my day listening to the needs of businesses, as well as speaking to people and making those connections. So proper grasp of the English language, being able to communicate effectively. That's the biggest part, communication.
Yeah, and you did bring up transferable skills. I'm wondering if you could elaborate on that to help everyone understand more so what you mean by that, and maybe a practical example for our high schoolers out there.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm glad you want to touch on that. Actually, every year we do an economic survey of our businesses, and I mentioned that workforce is the biggest issue, and it's not just here in PA, it's all across the country right now. When you look at the actual job skills, technical skills only rank about 39% right now, whereas soft skills rank at closer to 55%. There's a bigger disconnect of folks with those soft skills and the skills that get you a job, frankly, being on time every day, not having to be told to put your cell phone away every 10 minutes, staying on task, dressing appropriately, communicating effectively. Those are very important skills that companies look for. The way I've had it told to me by businesses is if I can find someone who shows up to work on time, communicates well, doesn't have to be told to stay on task every 5 minutes, I'll teach them how to do the job. That's what's going to get you the job, is those soft skills.
Yeah, and I can just kind of reiterate and emphasize that point. We've heard that a lot across these sessions. So you are not the first to let our students know about that, but that it's a lot of, some of these things you can't teach, some of these soft skills you just acquire, and being on time and things like that. But that if they meet someone who has those skills, yep, they're willing to train them. They'll teach them to do exactly what they need them to do. So I think that's emerging as a theme for us throughout these sessions. So yeah, right. It is good. It is good for sure. So you mentioned a little bit about your sort of career pathway, your work at the community college, but can you tell us a little bit more about kind of your career journey and what made you make the decisions that you made? What were your influences and such?
Good. Okay, yeah, it's an interesting story. So I actually went to my local community college when I graduated high school. At the time, I aspired to be a radio broadcaster. I wanted to be a DJ on the radio, and I actually was. And it comes full circle because at the time, I had no idea what broadcasters did, what broadcasters earned. Truth is, kids working at McDonald's were making more money than me as a broadcaster.
Yeah.
And actually, I entered the world of broadcasting at the time it was starting to become automated. It's cheaper for a radio station to invest in software that automatically plays the songs and the commercials than to pay someone to do the job. And actually, frequently when you're listening to the radio now, even though someone's talking, they're not in a studio. Chances are they voice tracked that from home earlier in the day or even the day before. So a lot of the DJ jobs have been eliminated. So I chose the wrong career path for me. I had fun with it. But those skills I learned, how to talk effectively and appropriately, proper use of the English language, I was able to transfer. I left radio and went into a sales job. I actually sold cell phones, and then I sold mortgages, and then I started selling education. Went to work for a college when I was living in Baltimore, and when I moved back here, I went to work for a tech school originally for 5 years in admissions, and then to the community college for 7 years. And then when I saw this role open up, because I had already seen the disconnect that was happening between students and parents and the needs of the workforce, I thought, man, I got to have that job.
Yeah.
Creating those connections and that awareness.
Right. And I'm sure the work that you did really set you up to see that disconnect and want to make that kind of change. And just as a brief, you're and our backgrounds are very similar. Actually, I have a background in college admissions as well, and now work in this sort of career readiness role for a lot of the same reasons that you said. So I can empathize with a lot of what you're saying. So can you speak to, in your role, what are some of the best things that you get to do, the favorite parts of your job? And then on the flip side, we always get this question, what is something you don't like about your job?
Okay, that's a good question. My favorite thing is especially making connections with the students who need it the most. I mentioned I presented for a group of students in a rather poor district in Western PA last week, and they just aren't aware of the opportunity and aren't given the provided the opportunities that many of us experienced. So I really love making those connections. Actually, since that day, I've gotten quite a few of our businesses to agree to go in and talk to those kids to bring them awareness of the job opportunities they have right there in their backyard. And then I also enjoy meeting new people, and learning about all of the jobs and companies that exist in PA. I just had no idea the opportunity, even before I joined the chamber, the opportunity that existed in PA. I mentioned earlier all the great things about PA, and it's really true. What I don't like about my job, that's a tough one, because it's really hard to think about something I don't like.
That's a good place to be, right?
Yeah, I guess every once in a while I have to have a tough conversation with people about, finding, sometimes you have to have uncomfortable conversations with folks, and I'm not very good at that. Not necessarily confrontation, but just being real about the situations. Yeah.
And I can see in your line of work that there might be some really real conversations to be had around jobs and skills and such. So I can understand that for sure. So just kind of a follow-up to your favorite thing. If we have students on the call or watching this later who are thinking, I might be one of those students who I don't realize how many opportunities are out there. What is your advice to them? Where do they start to kind of learn a little bit more?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. They can actually go to our webpage, pachamber.org. We have a list of our investor members. And even though that's just a small sampling of members we have across the state, I think students are sometimes surprised when they see that list. Some of these companies are in PA. I'll use Google as an example. Google is in Pittsburgh. Amazon's actually developing their automated technologies there. We have a great education sector here in PA, a very diverse education sector. But that's one place to start. Another place that's great is Indeed, or any job resource site where you can go and just look up jobs in your area, and that'll open your eyes to some of the companies that exist and the work they're doing. that maybe you didn't know about.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that information. And I put the pachamber.org in the announcements again, so that again, if someone is out there and says, oh, I want to go to that site that Alan mentioned, it's there now. So you can certainly follow both of those links that are in there. So I've been keeping up with you this time.
That's awesome.
Can you speak to, and again, this is specific to your role, but someone who maybe is thinking, wow, I'd like to help folks out there understand what's out there. Is there a specific education requirement to do what you do or to work with the chamber or anything along those lines?
Well, here at the chamber, we do have a few lobbyists on staff. Obviously, that's our main role is advocacy. So for that type of role, you would want to do a political science degree. And then, of course, we have a marketing team, of which I was originally part of. My degree actually, I went back as an adult and got a bachelor's degree in marketing, which I was able to use to help me succeed in admissions and in this role. Business is a safe one because you understand kind of the ins and outs of business. Initially, I had gotten my associate's degree in communications with an emphasis on broadcasting. And then, like I said, when that didn't pan out, I went back to school a little bit of an older age, and got the marketing degree. Yeah.
Can you, and this is just for folks out there who might not know, can you explain a little bit what a lobbyist does and why you might employ them?
Sure. So they educate the legislature on how policy impacts the business. So for instance, we have someone here focused on education workforce. We have someone focused on energy and environment, and they're really there to provide facts about the that area that they're talking about. Again, they advocate on behalf of the business community. Most businesses actually have a lobbyist or a government affairs person on staff too, but it's really about educating the legislature and making sure they understand how these policies will impact the business community. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I think back on myself when I was in high school and hearing that term, but never exactly knowing what it was that they did, and certainly a good opportunity for anyone who might want to be involved and help them make a difference for sure. So because you work with youth, I'm going to ask this generally, and then I'm going to make it a little bit more specific as a second question as we kind of wrap things up here in our last couple of minutes. Okay. What are some pieces of advice, maybe based on your experience, that you could give our students to help them be the most successful in the job application process or the search process or any part of that?
Oh, that's a good question. Always put your best foot forward, I guess would be the easiest way to put it. You never know when you're in front of a future employer or in front of someone who you might have to do an interview with when you apply for a job. Be open to new ideas, and when it comes to actually making that career decision for your next steps after you leave high school, just find something you're passionate about. Don't let anyone else step on your dreams. That's what I always say. If you really believe this is what you want to do and you know this is what you'll love doing, go for it. And don't let your friends or anyone influence you differently. Go for that dream. And then it's true. I do not feel like I work 40 hours a week. Like, I love what I do. And I've had jobs where I was miserable for 40 hours a week, and you're not just miserable for 40 hours a week, you're miserable when you go home because you know you have to go back there tomorrow. So find your passion and follow it, and don't let anyone squash that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You definitely For everyone out there, I'll reiterate, you want to find a job where you don't feel like you're working for 40 hours a week. And so I think your answer kind of touched on that. But if I were to ask you to give, specific advice, especially to our seniors out there who are navigating everything that's going on and trying to make decisions about what comes next, anything specific advice-wise for those students who are making the decisions now?
That's a great question. I would say understand that your career is a journey and not an end point. I'll use my friend Rachel as an example, because I know when we're in school, we think I want to be a policeman, I want to be a businessman, I want to be this, I want to be that. But that doesn't necessarily have to be the end point. That could be the start of your journey. That could be part of your journey. My friend Rachel is a perfect example. She quit her successful sales job to become a nurse. She always wanted to be a nurse, so she paid for herself to go to community college and become an RN, started working as an RN at a local hospital, and said, this isn't all I want to do. I want to go further. And so they invested in her to get her bachelor's degree and then her master's degree, and now she's a nurse practitioner. So not only did she find a company that invested in helping her make her path forward, they doubled her salary when she got to that point, because now she's worth that. She has more skills. So, nurse was originally her goal, but then she got out there and realized, hey, there's places I can go with this. So don't think that that's necessarily the end point. And even if it doesn't work out, like I started in broadcasting and after a few years said, yeah, this isn't it. There's still skills you learn from that job that you can take other places.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for sharing that story, because that's a really great example of how, a job or a goal doesn't have to be the end game, that we're continually growing and moving forward and such. So I appreciate you sharing that and your story about how, being a DJ wasn't it for you. Sometimes that happens. So Alan, I thank you so much for joining us for the last half hour. Is there anything that I haven't asked about your work or your profession that you would like to share at the end here?
Wow, we covered a lot.
We did. It goes fast.
I hope the students will check out the starttheconversationhere.com site, play around with some of the resources and tools. And if you have further questions, feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Alan. I really appreciate you spending the last half hour with us. And if any students out there do have questions, you know where our contact information is on the website. So please feel free to reach out to myself or Nick Polini, anybody's contact information you find on there. And we're happy to pass any questions on to Alan, and I know he would be happy to answer them as well. Once again, a big thank you, Alan, for joining us, and thank you for those on the call who have joined us as well. Please keep an eye on our website for all of the links between now and December. We've got a lot of these coming up, and we'd love to have you join us for any one of them. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.